Hello, and thanks for watching this video. It's focused on a certain type of job costing with QuickBooks that you used to do it with Pro, Premier, and Enterprise, and that's estimate to actual. Where you create the estimate, you have all your items on there, and then you want to be able to report on, what you've budgeted for the job, and then what are the actuals for expense and revenue. And QuickBooks Online is pretty well known for not having a real complicated or sophisticated job costing module. I can certainly do reimbursed expenses, and in QuickBooks Online Plus, there's the customer job field on timesheets, single time entry, bill, checks, expenses. Even at the item level, you can pass that through to an invoice. But what about, job costing for estimate to actual reporting? So this video focuses on that and the things you need to set up in order to make that work in QuickBooks Online Plus. And you do require QuickBooks Online Plus for a couple reasons. Number one, the estimate to actual, we're really going to start with a budget. We are going to use an estimate. I know estimates are in Simple Start Essentials and Plus, but the budget's only in Plus. And two-sided items, right? For the products and services for the actual consulting work I'm going to be doing or what have you to show the cost and the revenue. Two-sided items is also only at the plus level. So those two alone would obviously focus you on QuickBooks Online Plus to apply this workaround. So right now I'm on the customer list and I am going to use this sub customer method. There really is no job field in QuickBooks Online, but you can make a customer a sub of another. So in QuickBooks Desktop, you're used to seeing, like, for example, let me go down to my example. I think I've already created a job and an estimate, so we'll look at that. The folk shop. So you'd see, and then the QuickBooks cleanup work, right? And you would see this similar in the customer center in QuickBooks Pro even, right? Where you have a customer and then a job indented below it. So same kind of theory. If I go into the actual customer, you'll see that there's a box here as sub customer. Nothing about a job, but sub customer, and you can choose to bill with parent or just bill with customer. So set up your parent customer and then the job under that, which is the quote unquote sub customer. And then let's look at some preferences next. So I'm going to click on the gear icon and then go to company settings. And you'll notice the company settings have changed. If you're used to QuickBooks Online and the old company preferences, we have made it a lot slicker and easier to navigate. It's just 5 buckets now. But you want to click on sales first. All right. And then here, your items. You have your show product service column on sales forms. This is something in the plus, right? So Essentials and Simple Start just have single-sided items. But you definitely want to check this so that you have a sales side for revenue and then you have a cost side. And I'm not really dealing with inventory for this, and that's, you want to make sure that's on. And it might also be helpful to turn on custom transaction numbers. And then you would just save that, go to expenses, and you want to edit this section too. Now this is more for, if you're actually tracking expenses and items by customer, this puts the customer job field, it's really a customer field, on expense forms and transactions, and also the items table would also be on expense and purchase forms, and you can add the customer, the quote unquote sub customer, the job that I'm tracking there as well. So you want to make sure those are checked too, and then click on advanced. And here there's one method of doing the job costing by class, but really we're going to stay with the sub customer method here. The last thing to look at is a couple things. Under automation there in advanced, it says copy estimates to invoices. There is no progress invoicing. I'm going to show you a workaround for that by actually creating a copy of the estimate. And it's a manual entry of the numbers and making sure that you have the total estimate, which goes to the budget, and then you invoice against, a copy of the estimate, and then you just leave like another estimate to invoice next time for the progress billing for what's left over, right? So that is one thing where desktop is, by far superior, right? However, if someone really wants QuickBooks Online and the job costing is not entirely really complex or sophisticated, you can still do it, the estimate to actual, in QuickBooks Online Plus. Okay, so let's continue on. So go ahead and copy estimates to invoices. And then also time tracking, you're going to want to make sure you add the customer field to timesheets and the service items. So you're going to turn both those on. It's real simple. You just click the little pencil and just turn it on and click save. So those are the settings that you're going to want to affect for this to work. And then we have products and services. Go ahead and click on that. And I'm only using a couple items, just a simple example, and you guys can take it from there as you do with your clients. But let's look at accounting consulting, for example. I'm going to edit that, and notice because I have that preference set, a sales and a purchase column. For my products and services, I have sales and purchase. I have a two-sided item. And if you actually convert from desktop, side note, two-sided items do come over to QBO now as two-sided items. Okay, notice though that the sales and purchase info is flip-flopped from the two-sided item on the QuickBooks side, desktop side. So make sure you're not putting the sale amount in the cost field just because you're used to having sales there for years in desktop, okay? And you put in your description, et cetera, and your appropriate cost of goods sold account, your revenue account over here. Okay, because the budget, the item on the estimate is going to be linked to this account, and that's where I'm going to put in the cost. I'm going to budget that versus the actual that I have on my cost transactions. And likewise, this item for revenue is hitting this particular income account. So when I invoice it, it's going to hit that account, credit that appropriately, and that's going to change the numbers in my budget to actual report. Okay. So once those are set up, now it's time to create the estimate. And I already have one here on my estimate number 1001. And really, I'm just doing a kind of a speaking engagement slash some consulting for the folk shop. It's actually QuickBooks cleanup work. Speaking fee, really this is for some training I'm doing for the house there, and then class fee, etc. Don't have any materials on here. The inventory would be similar to desktop, whereas inventory you don't do a lot when you do an estimate to actual because cost is hit when you sell the item. So a lot of contractors will use non-inventory parts. So it would be similar. You could have some materials on here. They're really two-sided items, not necessarily inventory. If you do have inventory, just know you're not going to see the cost or the actual of that till you actually copy the estimate to the invoice and save it. And there's my estimate. I have the sub-customer, and much like in QuickBooks, I have the parent, sub-customer, and they've accepted it, which is nice about on the QuickBooks Online side. You can show that the estimate status as well as who's been accepted by and the accepted date. That's helpful because you can kind of report on that or add those as columns. And I have my items, and I put in the quantity for the hours and the rate. This is what I'm going to be billing the client. This is what they're agreeing to. Notice there's no markup column, which I really think is a miss for QBO, and I've asked for that. And there's no change orders here as well. I suppose you could create an item to track change orders if you want. So once you have the estimate, right, now I'm going to go ahead and right-click and duplicate to have another window and close down the estimate. And I'm going to go to the budget, which you'll find under the gear icon, budgeting. And here's my budget. It's the TWN ball, the folk shop cleanup work, and you have multiple budgets per year, which is where QBO, one advantage over desktop would be that you can have multiple budgets per year. And I view it by year. You can view it by month, quarter, and year. It's up to you. If you're only doing the job for a month, do it for a month. But I just wanted to see the totals, really. That's why I chose year. And same down here. So you would go ahead and in the income revenue section, these items that were on that estimate there, particularly accounting, consulting, and technical telephone support, those are actually linked to a consulting revenue. Right? So I put in $1,000. Pulled that really from the estimate. Speaking fee and class revenue. Right? Those are my revenue items that I'm expecting in those amounts, the total that I should get from the job. And then here's the expected cost I was just explaining. I had to go into the product and service to find out what the cost was and then multiply it by the hours. And it's $375 of expense for 1099 cost of goods sold account. And then I have a class cost account as well, expense for $875. So now that I've created the budget, I can then run a report. I'm going to start out at all reports because that's where you guys will probably start. And business overview. And you're going to scroll down and you have two budget reports. There's the budget overview and the budgets versus actuals. This is what we're going to use. And by the way, all of this came from Stacy Kildal. It's her workaround she uses, and she has it on several blogs around town, if you will. But particularly for the Sleater blog, QuickBooks and Beyond, you can get screenshots and written steps on how to do it. So I'm going to go ahead and click Customize because it brings up the report, but also allows me to customize it first. because there's some things you're going to want to do on the report. So I'm just going to leave it for the full year. You can do it for the month or whatever you want. I chose the budget that I'm going to report on. It's the only one I have right now, but if you had more, you just choose it from the drop down. And I'm only want to show the accounts with budgeted amounts just to streamline it. And I'm going to do accounts versus total, right? So you have some other options, but I'm going to do accounts versus total. I'm going to leave the sort by. I am going to add the dollar amount over budget and dollar amount remaining. I'm not worried about percent right now, but those are options here for subcolumns if you want for comparison. And I'm going to actually filter by that particular customer. So it's their own, you know how in desktop at QuickBooks, when you do the estimate to actual summary, it opens up a list of customer jobs. You click on it. That's essentially what I'm trying to do. Right? I'm going to choose a cleanup work, and I'm going to click Run Report. And so here's kind of what I have so far for the budget. The total from the estimate is $3,600, and if I drill down, it'll go to the budget itself. The actual, I've already entered some cost. So if we were to drill down for the outside consultants, it'll bring me to a list of transactions. And let's go into a check just so you can see how it works. And because of the actual preferences I've set, it added a customer field to the item details section. This is important. You know, checks, bills, your expense form for the credit card charge. You want to make sure you're going to use the items tab just like you would in desktop because the estimate is item based. So I have the check, and this is what she did, and or I did, I guess, did this one. I'm clicking on the customer. Notice it looks a lot like in desktop, parent, sub, which is the job, but it's a sub customer. Notice the billable box I am not checking. Why? Because the customer already accepted the estimate, the contract. So I'm not going to actually send through more and add it to the end. I don't want to duplicate bill them, right? And that's really important on the timesheet as well. So if I were to go and enter time, and you do that under the plus sign, and let's do a single time activity. I also have a customer field here, right? This is basically going to be quote unquote customer job. And we'll say that, you know, I enlisted Deborah to work here, and she also did something on the cleanup work, and she was part of the telephone support. Now I'm going to uncheck, even though I am going to bill out on the estimate, I'm going to uncheck the billable box because I don't want this time flowing through to an invoice. The customer's just going to pay when I copy from the estimate to the invoice, but you do put in her time. She worked, and she did 2.5, and then I'm going to click Save and Close. And now that time is just time, but I can then put it on a check, you know, or a bill. So it is important to note that you will use a time activity by employee report if you're going to be writing checks to your vendors or subcontractors or employees from the time. I mean, the timesheet information will flow into payroll. There's no real job field or customer field there yet within QuickBooks Online. So for that time activity that I just entered, you guys saw for the cleanup work for the telephone support, again, I didn't make it billable because making it billable would allow me to reimburse, you know, that client. In other words, pass it through to an invoice. I'm not doing that here because the customer already accepted the contract. So I'm just going to copy that contract to the invoice. But notice for Deborah, you know, I have this, but when I go to an expense or a check or a bill, there's no drawer or any time that would say, hey, you need to write a check for, you know, to Deborah for this, because this is a non-posting entry, the time, right? Just like in desktop, it's time is just time until you put on a posting document. So I have this 2.5 hours, and I know I charge Deborah, you know, it's like $20 an hour is the cost to me. So when you look at your time by employee detail report, and I found that by reports, and then all reports, manage payroll, and then time activities by employee. You don't even need to have payroll turned on to have the time reports, right? But it's important because QuickBooks Online Plus is also where you're going to be tracking time. That's another key thing of why you need to do this in QuickBooks Online Plus. So you just run the time activities by employee detail report, even though Deborah is a quote-unquote vendor. And now I know how much to pay her because she worked 2.5 hours. So I'll just write a check or a credit card charge or a bill to Deborah. So watch when I choose her name, right? And I'm going to go ahead and delete this line from before. This is item again. She did telephone support. This is what you would do for the cost side of this to track this. And she just did, you know, 2.5 hours. But this cost would be not billable, but linked to that particular job. And this is going to be an actual amount that should show up on that budget to actual report. So I go ahead and click close, saved it. And that's how you're incurring these costs, just like you would in desktop on the cost forms and transactions, bill, check, expense. And then when you're ready to invoice against the estimate, we'll do that next. But let's go back and look at our budget to actual now. Report, again, all reports, business overview, budget to actual. I'm going to customize it. And at this point, you really want to memorize this report so that you can just run it each time. And I'm actually going to show you now how to add it to your icon bar, which is really a top icon bar of Google Chrome. So I have accounts versus total. Again, money over budget, money remaining, and I'm going to filter. You could filter by income and expense accounts too if you wanted to, but it's just going to look at all. And then the cleanup work, and I'm going to go ahead and run the report. So now numbers have changed a little bit, so I can look at the actual for like class cost. Outside consultants has gone up. I budgeted 375. I'm actually over. Oops, right? And, so those kind of things that allow you to track this within QuickBooks Online Plus that historically people just thought that QBO was not able to do. So once you have customized the report, you click Save Customizations, and that's essentially going to memorize it. So once you've named the report, when you click Save Customizations, this will quote unquote memorize a report. You can then add this report to a group. You just click on it, Add New, add a group. This will be, job costing or estimate to actual or whatever you want to call it. It's important to create a group because you can highlight the group and then auto send, set up a schedule to send the report to other users that work on this client too. And then go ahead and click OK. Another benefit of QBO, auto sending reports to customers as well as other staff in the firm or other people, other users of QuickBooks Online. So I've memorized the report. You can also click the bookmark this page and I can go ahead and just add it. This will be the, estimate to actual for a folk shop. I can add it to the bookmarks bar. That's the reporting. Now the last step, let's go ahead and get some revenue in, right? I have no real revenue right now from this. It's all cost of goods sold and expenses. So we're going to go to the estimate now. And let's go to customers, go down to my customer, open the estimate. There's no real progress invoicing within QuickBooks Online. So what I'm going to do is really going to make a copy of this estimate. And so now I have two. I have that one, and I also have my original estimate here. So they're both the same amount. There's the other one. And you're going to want to save and close the copy as well, because I'm going to copy this one to the invoice. But before I do that, you have to then manually kind of figure what you've worked on, right? So I did, I'm going to invoice for 1 hour, 1.5 hours here, 5 hours here, and I'm going to invoice the 4 and the 2 for class fee and the speaking fee because I did those up front. And I'm going to go ahead and save and close this. This one I will change to 1 and then 5 and then 0 and 0 because these are what I have left over, right? So I'm going to go ahead and save and close this one first, and this one's called 101-1. Save and close that one. And then this one is 101-2. The totals of both those estimates, right, are going to feed into that budget. So the report shouldn't have changed. The budget amount shouldn't have changed. You just really have to keep track of this, right? And then the 101-1 is the one I'm going to copy to the invoice. And if we go back to the Customers tab, you see I have Estimate 101-1 and then Estimate 101-2, and the total amount is $3,600, right? So now I'm going to go to Estimate 101-1 and copy it to an invoice. And I'm just going to go ahead and click Save and Close, and I'll still have $450 left over. So I should have $3,150 of revenue on that report. So let's do that right now. Go ahead and click Save, Close. And now let's go back and look at our report. Click at Estimate to Actual, that icon at the top. And now I got some better numbers. I'm breathing easy because I got $3,150 in revenue, and I'm still, under budget by $450. But because I still have that estimate open, that Estimate -2, then I know that I'll need to, eventually take care of that. And so this one's closed, the 101, so I can close that one. Right, so if we go back to my customers tab for the folk shop cleanup work here, you can see that 101-1 is closed, right? And then 101-2 is still pending, still open. So that's the one I invoice to do the final invoice. So that's progress invoicing part of, this estimate to actual or budget to actual job costing method using QuickBooks Online Plus and the workarounds you've seen here. So I know there's a lot involved, so take your time kind of piecing through it. And then again, if you want to read the article on how to do this by Stacy Kildal, just go to QuickBooks and Beyond, Google that, it's the Sleater blog, and just search for her name or search for QuickBooks Online Job Costing, and you'll find the article. But I hope this was helpful. Have a great day.